Hello everyone, I am Sunil Kumar BL, Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Canara Engineering College. I am handling Advanced Computer Architectures 17 CS 72. Textbook is Advanced Computer Architecture by Kai Hong and Naresh Jotwani. Reference book is Computer Architecture, a Quantitative Approach by John L. Hennessy and David A. Patterson. Chapter 12, Instruction Level Parallelism. We can define computer architecture as the arrangement by which the various system building blocks, processors, functional units, main memory, cache, data paths, and so on are interconnected and interoperated to achieve desired system performance. Processors make up the most important part of computer system. Therefore, in addition to a processor design also constitutes a central and very important element of computer architecture. Various functional elements of a processor must be designed, interconnected, and interoperated to achieve desired processor performance. System performance is the key benchmark in the study of computer architecture. A computer system must solve real-world problem or support the real-world application for which the user is installing it. Therefore, in addition to the theoretical peak performance of the processor, the design objectives of any computer architecture must also include other important criteria, which include system performance under realistic load conditions, scalability, price, usability, and reliability. In addition, power consumption and physical size are also often important criteria. A basic role of system design is that there should be no performance bottleneck in the system. Typically, a performance bottleneck arises when one part of the system, that is, one of its subsystem, cannot keep up with the overall throughput requirements of the system. Such a performance bottleneck can occur in a production system, a distribution system, or even in traffic system. If a performance bottleneck does occur in a system, that is, if one subsystem is not able to keep up with other subsystem, then other subsystem remain idle, waiting for response from the slower one. In the figure, we can see the schematic diagram of a simple computer system consisting of four processors, a large shared main memory, and a processor memory bus. For three subsystems, we assume the following performance figures. 1. Each of the four processors can perform double precision floating point operations at the rate of 500 millions per second. Second, the shared main memory can read or write data at the aggregate rate of 1000 million 32-bit words per second. Third, the processor memory bus has the capability of transferring 500 million 32-bit words per second to or from main memory. The system exhibits a performance mismatch between the processor's main memory and the processor memory bus. The data transfer rates supported by the main memory and the shared processor memory bus do not meet the aggregate requirements of the four processors in the system. The system architect must pay careful attention to all such potential mismatches in system design. Otherwise, the sustained performance which the system can deliver can only equal the performance of the slowest part of the system, that is the bottleneck. Basic design issues. Instruction pipeline and cache memory hide the memory access latencies of the instruction execution. With multiple functional units within the processor, superscalar instruction execution rates greater than 1 per processor clock cycle can be targeted. Using multiple issue pipeline architecture, the aim is that enormous processing power made possible by VLSI technology must be utilized to the full, ideally with each functional unit producing a result in every clock cycle. With single processor chip today containing a billion 10 raised to the power 9 or more transistors, system design is not possible in the absence of a target application. This design choice is also related to the depth of the instruction pipeline. In general, design which aims to maximize the exploitation of instruction level parallelism need deeper pipelines. Up to a point, such designs may support higher clock rates. Let us see the execution of machine instructions from a single sequential stream. The instructions are stored in main memory in program order, from where they must be fetched into processor, decoded, executed, and then committed in program order. In this context, we must address the problem of detecting and exploiting the parallelism which is implicit within the instruction stream. We need a prototype instruction for our processor. We assume that processor has a load store type of instruction set, which means that all arithmetic and logical operations are carried out on operands which are present in programmable registers. Operands are transferred between main memory and register by load and store instructions only. We assume a three-address instruction format as seen by most RISC processors so that a typical instruction for arithmetic or logical operation has the format opcode followed by operand 1 followed by operand 2 followed by result. Our aim is to make the discussion independent of any specific instruction set, and therefore we shall use simple and self-explanatory opcodes as needed. Data transfer instructions have only two operands, source and destination registers. Load and store instruction to or from main memory specify one operand in the form of a memory address using an available address mode. Effective address for load and store is calculated at the time of instruction execution. Conditional branch instruction needed to be treated as a special category since each such branch presents two possible continuations of the instruction stream. Branch decision is made only when the instruction executes. At that time, if instruction from the branch not taken are in the pipeline, they must be flushed. But pipeline flushes are costly in terms of lost processor clock cycles. The payoff of branch prediction lies in the fact that correctly predicted branches allow the detection of parallelism to stretch across two or more basic blocks of the program without pipeline stalls. Data dependencies. Assume that instruction IK follows instruction IJ in the program. Data dependence between IJ and IK means that both access a common operand. For the present discussion, let us assume that the common operand of ij and ik is the programmable register. Since each instruction either reads or writes an operand value, accesses by ij and ik to the common register can occur in one of four possible ways. Read by ik after read by ij, read by ik after write by ij, write by ik after read by ij, and write by ik after write by ij. Among these, the first pattern of register access does not in fact create a dependence, since the two instructions can read the common value of the operand in any order. The other three patterns of the operand access do create dependencies amongst instructions. Based on the words shown, these are known as read after write RAW dependence, write after read WAR dependence, and write after write WAW dependence respectively. Read after write is true data dependence in the sense that the register value written by instruction ij is read, that is used by instruction ik. This is how computation proceeds. A value produced in one step is used further in subsequent step. Therefore, RAW dependencies must be respected when program instructions are executed. This type of dependence is also known as flow dependence. Write after read is also known as anti-dependence because in this instance instruction ik should not overwrite the value in the common register until the previous value stored therein has been used by the prior instruction ij, which needs the value. Such dependence can be removed from executing program by simply assigning another register for the write instruction ik to write into. With read and write occurring in two different registers, the dependence between instruction is removed. In fact, this is the basic of the register renaming technique, which we will discuss later. Write after write is known as output dependence since two instructions are writing to a common register. This dependence is violated, then subsequent instruction will see a value in the register which should in fact have been overwritten. That is, they will see the value written by ij rather than ik. This type of dependence can also removed from the executing program by assigning another target register for the second write instruction, that is by register renaming. Part A of the diagram shows a basic block of 6 instructions denoted I1 through I6 in program order. Entry to the basic block may be from one of multiple points within the program. Continuation after the basic block would be at one of several points, depending on the outcome of conditional branch instruction at the end of the block. Part B of the figure shows a possible pattern of dependencies as they may exist amongst these six instructions. For simplicity, we have not shown the typical type of each dependencies. Example, RAW, R of 3, etc. In the partial order, we see that several pairs of instructions such as I1, I2, I2, I3 and I4 are not related by any dependence. Therefore, amongst each of these pairs, the instructions may be executed in any order or in parallel. Control dependence. Assume that instruction ij is a conditional branch and that whether another instruction ik executes or not depends on the outcome of the conditional branch instruction ij. In such a case, we say that there is a control dependence of the instruction ik on instruction ij. Design a superscalar processor to detect and exploit the maximum degree of parallelism available in the instruction stream, that is, execute the instructions in the smallest possible number of processor clock cycle by handling correctly the data dependencies, control dependencies, and resource dependencies within the instruction stream. Before we can make progress in that direction, however, it is necessary to keep in mind a prototype processor design on which problem solution can be attempted. Model of a typical processor. A processor with load store instruction set architecture and a set of programmable registers as seen by the assembly language programmer or the code generator of a compiler. Whether these registers are bifurcated into separate sets of integer and floating point register is not important for us at present, nor is the exact number of these registers. To support parallel access to instructions and data at the level of the fastest cache, we assume that L1 cache is divided into instruction cache and data cache, and that this split L1 cache supports single cycle access for instruction as well as data. Some processors may have an instruction buffer in place of L1 cache for the purpose of this section. However, the difference between them is not important. The first three pipeline stages on our prototype processor are fetch, decode, and issue. Following these are the various functional units of processor, which include integer unit, floating unit, load or store unit, and other unit as may be needed for specific design. Let us assume that our superscalar processor is designed for k instruction issues in every processor clock cycle. Clearly, then the fetch, decode, and issue pipeline stages, as well as other elements of the processor, must all be designed to process k instructions in every clock cycle. On multiple issue pipelines, issue stage is usually separated from decode stage. One reason for this increasing a pipeline stage is that it allows the processor to be driven by a fastest clock. Decode stage must be seen as preparation for instruction issue, which by definition can occur only if the relevant functional unit in the processor is in a state in which it can accept one more operation for execution. As a result of these issue, the operation is handed over to the functional unit for execution. The process of issuing instructions to functional units also involves instruction scheduling. For example, if instruction ij cannot be issued because the required functional unit is not free, then it may still be possible to issue the next instruction ij plus 1, provided that no dependence between the two prohibits issuing instruction ij plus 1. When instruction scheduling is specified by the compiler in the machine code it generates, we refer to it as static scheduling. In theory, static scheduling should free up the processor hardware for the complexities of instruction scheduling. In practice, though things do not quite turn out that way. If processor control logic schedules instruction on the fly, taking into account inter-instruction dependencies as well as state of the functional units, we refer it as dynamic scheduling. Much of the rest of this chapter is devoted to various aspects and techniques of dynamic scheduling. The basic aim in both types of scheduling, static as well as dynamic, is to maximize the instruction level parallelism, which is exploited in the executing sequence of instructions. The process of issuing instructions to functional units also involves instruction scheduling. A branch prediction unit has also been shown in the figure 12.4 to implement some form of a branch prediction algorithm. Figure 12.5 shows a processor design in which functional units are provided with reservation stations. Such designs usually also make use of operand forwarding over a common data bus, also called CDB, with tags to identify the source of data on the bus. Such a design also implies register renaming, which resolves RAW and WAW dependencies. Compiler-detected instruction-level parallelism. One relatively simple technique which the compiler can employ is known as loop unrolling, by which independent instructions from multiple successive iterations of a loop can be made to execute in parallel. Unrolling means that the body of the loop is repeated n times for n successive values of the control variable, so that one iteration of the transformed loop performs the work of n iteration of the original loop. Loop unrolling: independent instructions from multiple successive iterations of a loop can be made to execute in parallel. Unrolling means that the body of the loop is repeated n times for n successive values of the control variable, so that one iteration of the transformed loop performs the work of n iterations of the original loop. Consider the following body of a loop in a user program where all the variables except the loop control variable I are assumed to be floating point. The code is for I is equal to 0 to 58, do C of I is equal to A of I into B of I minus P into D of I. After the loop unrolling, we do get the code like for j is equal to 0 to 52, step 4, do. Within the body, C of j is equal to A of j into B of j minus P into D of j, followed by 3 more instructions with the indices j plus 1, j plus 2 and j plus 3. After the body of loop outside, we need to write 3 more instructions C of 56 is equal to A of 56 into B of 56 minus P into D of 56 followed by C of 57 and C of 58 instructions are written. Note carefully the values of loop variable j in the transformed loop. Program fragments are equivalent in the sense that they perform the same computation. Of course, the compiler does not transform one source program into another. It simply produces machine code corresponding to the second version with the unrolled loop. Dependence across loop iterations. Consider the following loop in a source program which appears similar to the loop seen in the previous example, but has a crucial new dependence built into it. The code is for I is equal to 0 to 58, do C of I is equal to A of I into B of I minus P into C of I minus 1. Now, the value calculated in the ith instruction of the loop makes use of the value C of I minus 1 calculated in the previous iteration. This does not mean that modified loop cannot be unrolled, but only the extra care should be taken to account for the dependencies. There should be the strategy to minimize the number of pipeline stalls and flushes encountered while executing an instruction stream. In other words, we must minimize wasted processor clock cycles within the pipeline and also, if possible, within the various functional units of the processor. In this section, we take a look at a basic technique known as operand forwarding, which helps in the reducing the impact of two data dependencies in the instruction stream. Consider the following simple sequence of two instructions in a running program. Add R1, R2, R3, Shift R, #4, R3, R4. The result of the add instruction is stored in destination register R3 and then shifted right by 4 bits in the second instruction, with the shifted value being placed in R4. Thus, there is a simple RAW dependence between two instructions. The output of the first is required as input operand of the second, represented in the form of graph as shown in the diagram. In a pipelined processor, ideally, the second instruction should be executed one stage and therefore one clock cycle behind the first. However, the difficulty here is that it takes one clock cycle to transfer ALU output to destination register R3 and then another clock cycle to transfer the contents of register R3 to ALU input for the right shift. Thus, a total of 2 clock cycles are needed to bring the result of the first instruction where it is needed for the second instruction. Therefore, as things stand, the second instruction above cannot be executed just one clock cycle behind the first. This sequence of data transfers has been illustrated in the next diagram. In clock cycle Tk, ALU output is transferred to R3 over an internal data path. In the next clock cycle Tk plus 1, the content of R3 is transferred to ALU output for the right shift. When carried out this in this order, clearly the two data transfer operation take 2 clock cycles. But note that the required two transfers of the data can be achieved in only one clock cycle if ALU output is sent to both R3 and ALU in the same clock cycle, as shown in the diagram B. In general, if X is to be copied to Y and the next clock cycle Y is to be copied to Z, then we can just as well copy X to both Y and Z in one clock cycle. Figure shows the dependence graph of three instructions: add R1, R2, R5, sub R5, R6, R7, shift R #4, R3, R4. Since there is only one dependence in this instance amongst the three instructions, the graph in the figure has three nodes and only one edge. But why should sub be executed in any order other than program order? The answer can only be this: to achieve better utilization of processor clock cycle. For example, if for some reason add cannot be executed in given clock cycle, then the processor may well decide to execute sub instruction before it. Therefore, the processor must make on-the-fly decisions such as: 1. Transferring ALU output in parallel to both R3 and ALU input, and or 2nd, output of order execution of the instruction sub. This implies that the control logic of the processor must detect any such possibilities and generate the required control signals. This is in fact what is needed to implement dynamic scheduling of machine instruction within the processor. Thank you.